Welcome back, and I wanted to ask the people, our leadership group who came in, I wanted to see if I could get a reaction from you, something that really stuck out for you among this conversation. Maybe Senator Padilla.
I want you to know I was a foster child for about 6 years when I was growing up. It's incredibly difficult, and I can only imagine 22 living arrangements within 6 years. I think I almost fell off my chair when I heard that. I applaud you for being here. I think you're role models for people that might be in the similar, in this similar type of situation, and I'm just very proud of the two of you, and I encourage you to continue to improve your educational background and also to advocate on behalf of this particular part of your life. In the legislature, we did have several pieces of legislation. I sponsored one of them this year on a homeless youth transitional living facility that we're attempting to construct. When we do this bill again, because I'm absolutely going to continue to focus on this, I want to see the two of them in Santa Fe to tell this story from the heart as you did, because that's incredibly important and very powerful.
The bill was not successful, but it would have brought $100,000 to Bernalillo County?
Well, actually, it was about $200,000, and we don't know if it's successful just yet, because we had a piece of legislation initially, and then to kind of not pull an end run, if you will, but to try to make sure that it had every chance to succeed, I did an amendment to the state budget as well of about $200,000. Now, we don't know where all those amendments are going to fall when the bill is signed, but ideally, again, if it doesn't happen this year, we're going to continue to work on this to make sure that it does.
I mean, one thing we didn't touch on in the last part was housing, and that's a big issue.
That is a big issue, yes.
It's a huge issue.
Yes.
I think probably the reason it wasn't mentioned is because it is so pervasive. It's just so unaffordable for anybody really to rent, let alone a young person on a very, very limited income.
Patrice, I know you have some vouchers through CYFD. Can you talk about that?
Right. Juvenile justice gets, quote unquote, 10 vouchers, and we get 10 vouchers to place youth in scattered site apartments across the city, and youth pay about 30% of their income. But 10 vouchers based on the number, I mean, we have almost 100 youth who age out of the system every year across the state, and it doesn't quite meet the needs. The other issue with it is that youth are eligible to come into that program at age 18, and then they must exit that program at age 21. And the goal is that they are eligible for Section 8 housing, but by that time, which is another federal program that would be available to them. But the waiting list is long. They purge the list on a regular basis. And so there are lots of complications around making sure that they have safe, affordable, and stable housing. And what happens frequently is that youth choose to return to their biological families when they turn 18. Sometimes that works out okay, but a large proportion of the time it doesn't work out okay.
What were your options?
Since my case was out of Santa Fe, I was hardly ever invited to my case hearings or any of my team meetings. In my case, I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who was a YTS worker for Sandoval County. So I was fortunate enough to have the voucher. I have an identical twin sister who wasn't in foster care. So I did not live with her since I was 12 years old. I chose to get out of my apartment, my voucher, a year early from 21 because I thought that I can move in with my sister and try to create that bond that we never had time for. And unfortunately, that situation did not work out. So I had to end up moving in with my spouse who, again, if it wasn't for her, I would be homeless right now because I don't have my voucher anymore.
Were you able to find a house?
Well, when I turned 18, I was in a transitional living service. I was supposed to be on the list for the vouchers. Somehow my name got taken off the list because I guess I had a place to stay. I wasn't really homeless. And I got an apartment where I've been ever since. And I'm thinking about moving again, but it's scary because you have to search for an apartment. And I'm on the Section 8 housing list. I'm number 200 something, which is good because there's thousands and thousands of people on that list.
I wanted to go back to something Lauren said and go to you, Judge Romero, because you said you weren't part of your court hearings or your team meetings. And I think this is something that you have been looking to address. You're having an open house, right, in the court?
As Lauren was speaking, a case came to mind
where the child was actually in down in the southwest corner of the state. He was subsequently placed in a treatment foster family in Rio Rancho. His guardian ad litem, his caseworker were all down in the southwest corner of the state. By their own admission, they got to see this kid maybe twice a year. And I think the standard is, as a guardian ad litem, you must visit your child at least once a month, if I'm not mistaken. The judge in that court took it upon himself to do what we judges need to be more often engaged in and say, this doesn't make any sense. How do you feel, he called me, about us transferring the case to your judicial district, where a worker from your local office of CYFD, a local guardian ad litem would be appointed. It would be your case, and those two very critical people would be more apt to engage with this child. That happened, but we don't think outside the box often enough. And I don't believe the system, and we're all part of the system, encourages young people, especially youth, to be more vocal. From some of the exchanges we've had at the Children's Law Institute at those lunches where we meet with foster kids, they have a lot to say, but they don't think anyone's going to listen. And among the things that I hear that are kind of nerve-wracking to me is I am told by my foster family or treatment foster family or by the worker from the state that court's not a place where kids ought to be, that's for the adults to be involved in. But one of the big myths is that judges are all-knowing and all-powerful. For those of you who appear before judges know that it's exactly that, a myth. We are slaves to the information that's provided to us in court. And one of the critical pieces of information that is very often missing is the voice of the youth, the voice of the kiddos that are in foster care, who, for whatever reason, are led to believe that someone else is speaking for them. They need to be in court. And that's the whole objective of the open house, is to let kids know that they should be there. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, our Children's Code specifically says with youth, 14 and above, that if they're not in court, a specific finding has to be made on the record as to why they are not in court. We really don't do that.
Would
We
that
should do
help,
that.
these issues we're talking about, when they get to 18 and they all of a sudden have no services or very few? And
Absolutely. The judge is right, and the children do need to have a voice, and it's the lawyer for the child, because every child who goes into foster care up through age 13, they have a guardian ad litem. Then 14 and over, the youth gets a lawyer. And it's those lawyers are supposed to be the ones who are working with the youth, encouraging them to go to court, making sure that their voice is heard in court.
I didn't meet my lawyer until a week before I was 18, or like the final aging out court hearing. I didn't meet my lawyer till a week
so you had a
before.
lawyer starting at 14, but you didn't.
I always thought my guardian ad litem was my lawyer the whole time, but now I understand why he would never return my phone calls or anything, because he wasn't even my lawyer. No one told me my lawyer changed. And if I was able to go to my court hearings, maybe it would have changed my life. Maybe I would have got the medical attention I needed. Maybe I would have got the different things that I needed before I was 18.
I think the work that the two young ladies got involved in with the youth advocates, part of what they did is develop a youth document of rights and responsibilities. And in that document, it states that, a young person should be able to call their lawyer anytime they want to, that they should know what's going on with their plan, that they should be able to call their caseworker. But it's a pretty lengthy document, and it's supposed to be in every CYFD office across the state. I know in my
that doesn't have-
practice, that's something that I do when I
That's
start
been-
working with them.
We did that about 3-4 years ago. We finally got that passed by law. We even got it. I guess the state even reprinted their books and everything. It's by law, and still 4 years later, it's not being implemented.
So actually, the Bill of Rights and the Document of Responsibilities, Lauren actually took a leading role in developing those, and those are not actually part of the Children's Code, but it is something that we try and hand out to all youth.
And it is
it's
worded by youth.
Yeah, the youth worded that document, and so actually that document is very youth-friendly, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and the The rights part of the document is actually like numbered out as what we believe our rights should be, but the responsibility part, we kind of took more of a poetic approach.
Beautiful.
Because most anyone dealing with any kind of struggle in their life or obstacle needs a positive outlet. And most kids coming from foster care or mental behavioral health, their main outlet is poetry or art. So we did create our document as a poetic form stating these are my rights as a foster child, and as my co-foster child, these are your rights as well. But we also worded it in a form that the person who didn't know about it can understand and does feel empowered to use their voice.
Or you wanted to say something?
Well, yeah, going back to the attorney thing a few minutes ago, I remember one time in particular sticks out in my mind. My family from Texas contacted me and they wanted me to go live with them. And it was a very, very torn situation. And so my attorney calls. I met him one time 5 minutes before court started, but I talked to him on the phone a few times. And he was asking me, he's like, whenever you say what you want, you're probably going to get it, because he's like, excuse my language, but he's all, I'm damn good at what I do. And I was like, okay, but like I was like, I wanted more than anything to go to that specific court hearing, because I did want to go live with my family in Texas. But on the other hand, I didn't. And he's like, well, you have to tell me a clear-cut answer. But I didn't know a clear-cut answer. It would have meant the world to me to be able to tell a judge my reasons why I do and my reasons why I don't, to then be decided, not just, yes, I want to go. I ended up saying no because I was scared of so many things, but I didn't get the opportunity to say those things that I was scared of.
Judge, is that something that can change?
As judges, we have some ability to hold folks' feet to the fire. And there are any number of ways of doing it, but certainly placement decisions are the exclusive purview of the Children, Youth, and Families Department. As the judge, I cannot say to the department, Crystal wants to go with her family in Southwest Texas, you need to let her go. But what I can say is, have you investigated this family member? Have you done a home study on them? And why is this not an appropriate placement? I mean, it's their decision as to why it's not an appropriate placement, but put it on the record. Put your money where your mouth is, so there's a record of why you're not taking a family member, which is supposed to be a priority. And a mantra in our court among some of our programs is, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think it applies to just about anything you do in court. All you can do, the worst case scenario, if Crystal asks for something, is she's going to get a no. But if she doesn't ask, we don't know what the answer is going to be.
I think that's great, because literally I went to 1 out of 3 or 4 of my court hearings, and like I said, I met my attorney 5 minutes before, and it bothered me so much because then I didn't get to talk. He represented me fairly well in the 5 minutes we had to talk about it before, but I don't know. It was
Why? Can I ask someone, why is that? That doesn't seem right. Why?
No, it doesn't seem
No.
Why?
It's not right.
Okay, so how can this change?
If you get appointed to represent a person, a child, or a youth, it doesn't matter how much you get paid, you need to give that case your all. The reality is, however, though, that lawyers who represent children are compensated at a fraction of the rate that they are compensated for their other cases.
Who compensates them? CYFD or?
No.
The Administrative Office of the Courts.
Oh, okay.
You and I as taxpayers.
Yes.
Okay.
And so there are times that lawyers get these contracts to represent kids to supplement their private practices, and they do not have the ethic of, okay, this person may be 14 years old, but they're my client and I'm going to represent them just as zealously as I would an adult.
This year in the legislature, as an example, off the subject, but similarly, we took workman's compensation payment to attorneys, and we actually increased it by, I want to say, about 60 or 75%.
So is that something legislatively that can
is
be
something
done?
I believe legislatively that could be done, and I'd be happy to work with the advocates in the room to help accomplish that. But if I could just go back one more time to the person that's going to best tell their story is going to be the the youth. So if they're not allowed to be in court, I'm going to take that and beat that drum as loudly as I can. I'm shocked to hear that, by the way. I didn't know that.
One of the challenges is that court can be really scary, very intimidating. There's a lot of adults. The young person has, as Lauren so eloquently said before, been completely detached from everything that they know, and it can be a really challenging thing for them to go to court. So one of the reasons that we're doing this open house is to demystify that process. But all of us as a system and a community need to work really hard at making sure their voices are heard in the courtroom.
I had a kiddo one time say to me, I don't remember what the court hearing was, but after the hearing, I came down off the bench, may have been an adoption finalization or something, and the kid sort of very honestly said, "You're not that tall." Tell me something I don't already know. But that whole notion that somehow because we're sitting up there on our throne wearing a black dress, that somehow we're going to pound them and that they can't say what they want to say is something we need, as Patrice said, demystify. But we're normal, everyday human beings just like they are.
People don't see that.
No.
One of the things that this does for the child is it demonstrates for them that they can speak for themselves. It's going to be great development for their future. And I'd like for these folks, these youth, to be able to speak for themselves. So being in the courtroom and being able to, I don't want to say dust it up with the judge, but being able to get in there and ask any question they want to, I would ask that, the CYFD or the folks preparing them to go to the courtroom, let them know what it's going to be like.
We have so many issues we've talked about, and I hate to wind it up, but I sort of want to get a move to a point where we're like, if we all had a magic wand and endless resources, what could we do to make this better for kids?
What we've talked around, I think New Mexico has conceptually done a lot of things well, but hasn't always followed through on the implementation of those. Like the youth attorney, I think, is a great thing, but then we underpay them. The development of the Youth Services Bureau, that's a great thing. But what's missing, right, is there is no judicial oversight after 18. And I think that is a real potential for opportunity in New Mexico. It has to be youth-based, case planning. It can't be this. You can't just make 21 the new 18. You can't do that.
So how do you do that, Ezra? Do we just extend foster care to 21, or do we?
I think we need to. I think
No?
it's not extending foster care, but I think Steve said it, you have to make the system more fluid. We can accomplish what we want to accomplish if we want to accomplish it. So it has to be championed from the top down that this is important. The reality is this: we have youth that are in a care system that isn't designed perfectly, is never going to be designed perfectly, and it needs to have the opportunity to let them extend services up to a certain age, period. Maybe there's an age limit, definitely, you got to have some limits, but it has to be fluid, and that's the one thing it's not. It is so rigid, and once you're out, and there are some individuals who have never been in foster care that we miss that need services just like these individuals in their youth, and they can't even get in the system. More or less get put out the system because it's so rigid.
We need an attitude change amongst the system and amongst the adult. For a long time, the behavioral health system and probably the social work system and social services system has thought of themselves as sort of the experts over people's lives. And it was our job, we knew better for what people needed for their lives than they did. And I think there's this massive shift that's occurring, and it needs to occur, in which the system learns how to listen to people in a very profound level. When you learn how to listen to people well, whether it's the therapist or the wraparound team or the transitional living folks, when you learn to listen to people well, then you design plans that are individualized to the young. There's not some rule that says you have to do it the same way as this person. You shouldn't do it that way.
That's how the system makes it seem. It's so
Right.
clinical. It's so to the book. There's so many boundaries and restrictions. Of course, making sure that their safety is number one
Right.
always. But you don't have to lock them in a room with their foster parents staring at them to make that youth safe. I completely agree, and that's my huge point anytime I speak anywhere, is individuality. Every child, every person is an individual. And if there's so many rules and restrictions in every single case, there's not room for individuality. There's not room for someone to grow as a person because they're being looked at as one group of people who need one thing.
Is that possible within, because CYFD is the main
It's coming.
system.
I think
I mean, is that possible to do it?
It can't be cookie cutter.
Maybe
Yeah.
it is fear. I mean, I've heard a lot of the adults in the room today talk about fear and how to make the child feel comfortable to work with them and stuff, but maybe the adults also need to not be afraid and be open to listen to the youth.
And I want to add that we kind of put them in silos as though they were separate, different kids. They're all our kids. We approach all of these issues as though a system can handle them. It's at great cost to the community if we all don't have skin in the game. You know, what am I doing as a member of the community, separate and apart from what I do as a judge? You know, does my responsibility end when I take my black dress off and hang it up in the closet and go home? I think not. None of us in this room, I think, can be accused of that. But unless we engage other people where we live to say, it is in our economic best interest, it is in our social best interest that we take part in what's going on in our community, which means these young people. Failing to do so means we pay a price later.
One thing that has really shifted in the last, I would say, 10 to 20 years is that we have a lot more information now about how the brain develops, about child development, about the adolescent brain, about the effects of trauma on children. And I think one of the things that we need to do as a system is look at everything we do and check it against the research, because there is research now. I mean, when I started doing this in the early 90s, a lot of what we were doing was just kind of, hey, we're providing the kids with love and understanding, and that's enough. And it isn't enough.
And you're absolutely right. One of the things that we are faced with as a state is funding.
Yeah.
And instead of throwing all the spaghetti on the wall, let's only throw the pieces on the wall that we know work, because we have data, we have benchmarks, we have a number of things, we have voice of the customer, we can collect all of this data and make very smart decisions. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and I'm a firm believer in, is early childhood education and intervention. I think that's going to structurally change New Mexico for decades, because what it's going to do is it's going to present a better raw material to the classroom when they first go to kindergarten, higher reading scores at 3rd grade, great exposure and higher scores in 8th grade for math and science. 46% of our children are dropping out from kindergarten through 12. If we could cut that in half or by 75%, companies will look at New Mexico differently. It will change our economy, and folks will have a little more time to be a better parent, and they'll have a little more time to invest in their family unit. And you know, one of the things that was said here today, which is beautiful, and I'm going to use that as a mantra in my time in the legislature, is keeping families together. By creating a stronger economic future for New Mexico, and by having through early childhood, which will again change New Mexico for decades, it's going to keep families together, and we're going to have a much better chance of not having folks having to live in situations like what we heard about today.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming and sharing your time with us on this issue. I'm going to give Senator Padilla the last word.
Well said, Senator.
Yes, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.